And welcome. If you want to take a seat, we are so glad to get started. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. We're so honored to be here with you all in person at the Palais des Nations in Geneva. This event is a true collaboration between three incredible organizations: CSPOC, our host today, Global Citizen Forum, and the WIN Conference. So with that, I want to briefly introduce our host, Royston Flute. He is the president of CSPOC, which is a UN-accredited NGO focused on self-sustaining solutions. He's an eclectic polymath with a BSc in physics, MA in counseling, and a PhD in education. And with that, we have a short video. But even before that, I don't want to forget a few important reminders. So this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube Live, and perhaps some of your friends and colleagues are watching. If you have any questions about the recording, please contact us or find anyone with a pink rose. Masks are required to be worn in this room, and we appreciate your cooperation with that. We are recommending social distancing if you want to space yourselves out every other chair. And as I just said, the UN has requested we be particularly alert to the no food and drink policy in the room. So please ensure that only the tin cans of water are brought into this space. If you can also turn off your phone, we all forget sometimes, so please silence it now. So with that, I would like to welcome a small video about Royston.
Tell us about the NGO, and tell us about the concept of having people sustain themselves, right? As opposed to giving handouts, let's say, which is something that we've seen in the past and of course still happening.
I think we face a world of very significant challenges where we've discovered that just giving people handouts doesn't really work. We have to find a way of giving them the capability to help themselves, both in terms of people, organizations, and communities. And what we've discovered is there are three primary inputs in health, education, and enterprise that have to be integrated together to affect change. What we've discovered is if you can give people back their self-respect, then it's quite amazing how they become self-motivated to improve their environment, to actually not be a burden on others, and to create special communities. And this seems to apply across the world.
How do you impose a self-respect for people to sort of this dignity?
Well, the first problem is that when people can't have a dream, they can't see a vision of a way out, they get into a place called learned helplessness. And as they approach learned helplessness, they can't deal with it, so they project into fantasies of violence and substance abuse and dysfunctional behavior. These really can't be solved. We've tried many ways of trying to solve those problems, and we're still not successful. But if you can rebuild self-worth in terms of each individual, in each community, then they move away from this displacement activities, and you can start to reduce criminality, conflict, people move back to education, and women are actually vital in this equation. So it's really important that women take back their responsibility and their power. And we've found that putting women together in groups of three means that they're not isolated. They can resist the negative peer group pressures in the community, and they can start to achieve very substantial change.
Tell us about some of the recent projects you're working on and some of the changes that you've seen developing.
Well, to give you an example, in the UK, I was asked by the National Audit Office to look at education, because there have been many criticisms in the UK that we've been factory farming the children to just produce pieces of paper rather than creating whole human beings. So in looking at that education system, we found that in many ways it was failing by not being driving values and virtues in the individuals, if you like, what was originally present in the spiritual schools, but then has been sort of moved away from in our society. There was a tendency for individuals not to be able to critically think, so they were always listening to the latest stories from their community, which often was around criminality and dysfunctional behavior. And often they were not able to work together as teams. You know, sport was not recognized as a vehicle for growth. And therefore what happened is they became very isolated. And as they became isolated, a lot of them either sort of shut down or they actually became aggressive in the community. So what we're trying to do is in education is to create a new framework And we've found new ways of helping teachers to teach, which makes them 9 times more effective without actually spending any more money.
So what do you think the magic ingredients are?
The magic ingredient really is respect. It's about values. It's about allowing children to recognize their own creativity in the process, and the fact that if you respect that creativity, if you regard them as embryonic human beings that have huge potential, it's quite amazing what can be achieved. If children can learn in the first pass, then you can dramatically improve education. And what happens is, if you can try and promote a system which is based upon loving kindness, which is probably what we need to do in the world, and again, I've just come back from China, and there the president is very much saying we need to create a harmonious world. We've tried capitalism, we've tried communism, we need to find the middle path.
I feel a little daunted in such an audience, yeah, but I'm going to do my best. I think the soul is probably androgynous, so we need to find the balance between the masculine and the feminine. I think it's just that the feminine has been neglected for so long. We need to rediscover that truth. Women have been inspiring civilization since the dawn of time. What I've noticed is whenever there's a crisis, the women are the anchors, they're the survivors, they bring people together. I was chair of the Rotary Disaster Agency, and I found that the men disappear, the women stay together in micro groups, and this is an enormous power in a disaster. We're in a world at the moment where everything is changing. We can't really understand one outcome. We see the climate change, we see cultural transitions, we see populations moving, we see conflict. What is the answer? I think the answer is women coming together at the grassroots and affecting change in a way that really represents their inner power to create loving kindness, to create a future. A woman cares for a child and she cares for the people around her. I think the desire always is to find a way of helping women to feel secure and safe. That's the first objective. The second one is to promulgate loving relationships so that they feel that they are part of something as a community. I learned long ago that when I went out with a girl, that I was discussed by our entire friendship group. So I think this notion of sisterhood, this notion of conversation is essential. And finally, you have to have a dream. Everybody needs a dream. So if you have a dream, and I think what we're talking about today is women inspiring a peaceful and sustainable future. And again, I'm reminded of the play where this was a slight skit on the Peloponnesian Wars and Sparta, where in this Greek play, they said that the women banned sex and the war ended in 6 months. And I'm reminded also, and we're only just discovering this, the power of grandmothers. Grandmothers are formidable. I mean, you put the worst dictator in the world in a room with a grandmother, and they become a sniveling child in about 5 minutes. So grandmothers, we need to access them. We need to help them to take on their power, to be the zeitgeist for communities, the zeitgeist of common sense. And I think where we are now is we're coming to a point where I think even the Hopi Indians said, when you activate the grandmothers, you will actually start to see peace on our planet. So I'm just reminding you that I'm a work in progress. If anybody's got some suggestions, I'll happy to listen to you later. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I'm not a speaker, but I am here to introduce someone very special. A visionary and a true global citizen. Dr. Modi is a chemical engineer, an MBA in marketing and a PhD in finance. He's the founder president of the Global Citizen Forum, the former chairman of the Asia Crime Prevention Foundation, and the honorary president of the World Federation of United Nations Associations. A global thought leader, he's always stirred transformative action in business and society. In fact, his quest to promote a paradigm of equality started the Beyond Gender campaign, which this event is a part of. He's been working extensively for the United Nations for several years and has been covered globally by various media, including Fox News. This was a few years ago in the United Nations, New York, and we have one of his many videos here today for you.
You know, the world we live in is filled with turmoil, division, and war and strife. What can we do to turn all of that around? Well, Bhupendra Kumar Modi is challenging all of us to, get this, envision living as a global citizen, disregarding gender, nationality, religion, and race, thereby establishing what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called a beloved society, living beyond the dream.
When you are a global citizen, you are talking of how to change the world. And I think today the world needs to be changed.
Bhupendra Kumar Modi, better known as Dr. B.K. Modi, is a successful billionaire who is on a mission to change the world. He's the founder of the Global Citizens Forum. He created it, hoping to tear down the walls that divide us. He brings people together to connect cultures and nations.
We are all brothers and sisters. Yeah. We are coming from the same heritage of humanity.
Modi says his quest for global unity started many years ago as a child growing up in India.
I was born in a very rich family, but I was born with a lot of siblings. So I had to carve out my own path.
The path he carved out for himself was to engage the world. He attended boarding schools where he met people from diverse backgrounds. It prepared him for college at University of Southern California, where he discovered that people everywhere share a common hope to live in pursuit of happiness. That discovery changed his perspective on how to do business and to live.
So I became a person who started bringing new technologies, initially from US to India. So I brought the first copier, I brought the first fax, I brought the first computer, I brought the first mobile service, and so on and on.
As his multi-platform business known as Spice Global flourished, Modi became more successful, ultimately becoming a billionaire. But Modi desires something greater than monetary wealth. He wants to be rich in helping others succeed.
My dream is to see one world and to live as a one family. Today, the world is trying to be one market, where in market is the survival of fittest.
Modi's effort to make the world better is recognized by the United Nations. The organization recently appointed Modi as the coordinator for India's Millennium World Peace Summit. Modi also presented a Global Citizen Forum conference at the UN, which focused on globalization and sustainable development for underserved communities.
UN was the hope for peace. That hope is dying. You know, you talk of hope. Where is the hope? The hope is only from UN. And UN has become a hopeless. So we have to bring the hope back. We cannot let the hope die.
Dr. Modi is working hard to save hope for the world. He uses his own money to sponsor forums around the globe to bring people of all faiths, political persuasions, and ethnicity together to determine how they will work together to sustain the development of the world beyond the dream. And for his efforts, Dr. B.K. Modi is the recipient of numerous humanitarian awards, including the British-Japan Friendship Award for World Peace and the Annual Award for Exemplary Community Service from the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. He's doing a big work, but it's a Herculean task to try to bring hope to a world. As he said, the UN is hopeless.
Well, a lot of people, I think, would agree with him on that. But unfortunately, the UN is in charge of having to solve all these conflicts, or at least attempt to, in diplomatic efforts.
But it's good to see that a human being with billions of dollars is using his own money to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good.
I love to see that.
Good morning to all my fellow human beings. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I must thank Christine, who I've known for last 3 years now, who was introduced to me by my sister Rekha Modi, who is also here. So I think this has been a great journey to understand the WIN and GCF, Global Citizen Forum, and WIN are now collaborating together to bring the change in the world. So my speech, my delivery will be basically on 2 points, but Mr. Roy said you must talk on 3 points. So I'm now going to make one more point. So we are talking of empowerment. We are talking of change, and we are talking of hope. So these are the 3 things which I think all the women or men have common in their mind. So I think let's talk of empowerment first, because that's the top thing in women's mind and also in men. As I said, I was born in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, and I was the 9th of that. So I have to find a way to empower myself first, which I did. And I said, decided to think that I'm the only child, and I raised myself as the only child of my father, mother. I ignored the rest of the 10. So that was my first empowerment. So I think empowerment is something which you have to do for yourself. Nobody can help you in doing the empowerment unless you believe in yourself. And that belief comes when you understand what the world is there. So today, if you see why the woman is not empowered, the reason is basically starting for the religious book. The religion, or any religion, has defined the role of man and woman differently. And this has been there for thousands of years. And because we all are religious people from inside, we have to first change ourselves from being religious to spiritual. So this journey from religious to spiritual is the first journey. And this journey can start by understanding that God is not something outside you. It's not that you and God are two different. The God is inside you. The same energy which the God has given to all of us is inside us. When that consciousness, that energy goes out, we become dead. So first is empowering yourself, an empowering feeling that we are empowered by the God. That's the first part. The second part is the constitutions. Various nations created these constitutions at the time of independence and made changes. But most of the constitutions of the world do not give equal power or equal empowerment to women. And this constitution also need to be changed. My sister is working hard in India to change this constitution by providing 50% reservation in the state assemblies. Because how you change, unless you can change the constitution, you have the voting power. Just now Mr. Roy talked of China. In China, you may not have a voting power, but in other nations, democratic nations, including US, India, most of European countries, UK, you are living in a democracy. In democracy, you are empowered because you have the voting rights. Use that voting rights to your favor. The third thing which is very much working is that women feel we need to struggle to get empowered. It's not about struggle, it's about knowledge. If you are educated, if you have higher education than your brother or your sister, if you have higher education than your mother, if you have higher education of all the people around the society, you will be empowered. As they said, I was the only person in this 11 which got the highest education. So that was my first way of empowering myself. So empowerment comes from education. Today you are not being seen as a woman. I have with me Dr. Pooja. She is a doctor. A doctor could be man or woman. You don't worry about who the doctor is when you go to the hospital. So it's the education which empowers you. So that is, we talk of empowerment. But how do we change it? the second part of my speech is about change. The major change came in 1945 when the Second World War happened. After the Second World War, the British used to rule the world at that time. And they have enslaved the world. And China was enslaved, India was enslaved. Most of the world, people were living a life of slavery. I come from India. Fortunately, I was the ninth child, but the only child who born after the independence. So I did not see the enslavement. I did not see India under power of Britain. But what happened in the Second World War, that Britain asked for the help. They were themselves defeated. And they went to US and asked for help. The US at that time was democratic. Abraham Lincoln had already changed the constitution. They have made the people who are black equal. They have also made women empowerment in the constitution. So US was an epitome of change. And this change US brought all over. And very soon after 1945, all the nations got their independence. Not because they want to give it, but because United Nations at that time created a body. And this was formed through UN. The whole UN was formed on the behest of United States of America. I think you would be aware of that. But USA did one mistake. The mistake they did was they put a vetoes. And they put the vetoes on the allied partners, which are Russia and UK, but also powers which were made independent. At that time, China was under Japan and France was under Germany. And these two powers, was defeated, Germany and Japan, and these two countries also got the vetoes. Now we are in a position, or we are seeing that two major veto powers are fighting. So what will Ukraine war end to? The Ukraine war is a war which will bring change. Ukraine war is like starting of a third world war. But don't forget how the Second World War ended. The Second World War ended when USA put an atomic bomb in Japan. That was by bringing new technology and everybody surrendered. Are we going to have another atomic bomb? Maybe. Because people have atomic bombs like crazy. The largest number of atomic bombs are with Russia. So if you try to take over Russia, you think Russia will not put an atomic bomb? So don't be in the hope that atomic bomb will not happen. But suppose atomic bomb happens, what will happen? If the atomic bomb happens, then people will see a major change will be there. And this change will again come by using the space force. The war is no longer to be on the earth. Now USA and many countries have space force. They have army on the space. And that is the new era coming of change, is a space age. All the technology today is done through space. Telecommunication, Wi-Fi you use, all the things you buy, everything is being ordered through the space. It's all in the space. So I think this major change is going to come because of technology, which is already happening, but also because this 5-nation veto will go off, I think. Because you can't just take Russia veto out. If the veto has to go, it has to go for all the nations. I've been trying in United Nations for many, many years to get the vetoes out. Because veto is not fair. Veto is not fair. United Nations is working where General Assembly has become, they can't be effective. Because they went to, for Ukraine, they went to General Assembly. 85% people voted in favor, but Russia vetoed. So the change will come when there's a change in the whole system. And the system, I think, is required to be changed right here in United Nations. And the change we have to do in United Nations is get rid of these vetoes, which is there. So through this podium, I'm appealing to United Nations to change the vetoes. If they don't change, let me warn you, not warn you, but let me tell you that there will be an area where you will see atomic bomb. You will see it. Let's come to the hope. What is the hope then? If this happens, what is the hope? And that's what we were talking at the Fox News. The hope is not there with UN anymore unless they change themselves. If the vetoes are not changed, then there's no hope. The UN is hopeless. And I repeat that, UN is hopeless with the vetoes. But if they are able to change the vetoes and they have to restructure the constitution of UN, then there's a hope. If they change the constitution of the countries, there's a hope. If they change the religious books and go for spirituality, there's hope. And this hope can be done by women who have been the ones sufferer because of the constitution, because of the nations, and also because of religion. And I appeal from this desk to all women to think themselves as a spiritual being, not as a woman. If you start thinking as a spiritual being, in Global Citizen Forum, we said that we have to think beyond religion, beyond nationality, beyond gender. If you do that, I can tell you that as a spiritual human being, we are all together. If you say, woman, I can't be with you. I'm not a woman, but I am a spiritual being, and so are you. So let's enjoy this knowledge of being a spiritual being. And we have a doctor here who was telling me about stem cell, and stem cell, I tell you, is same of man and woman, the first cell. I took a stem cell of an 18-year-old woman, not man. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Ram. So I now have the great pleasure to introduce Kristen Enig. And just a note that I didn't mention at the start, but if you have trouble hearing anyone, it is louder in the earpiece. So feel free to use the earpiece if you have trouble hearing the speakers. So Kristen Enig is a global pioneer for women in authentic leadership. She's the founder and CEO of WIN, which was created 25 years ago to bring alive a vision of a more feminine, global, and sustainable way at work, in communities, and life. With that very brief introduction to her incredible story, here's Kristen.
So thank you very much for that introduction. And I will not start with a video. Anyway, but I will start with reminding all of us how amazing it is that we are here together today. Because we may look at the world and it could look pretty dark when we look at the newspapers. But our reality right now, right here, is that we are in this room together. And that's what's happening to all of us right now, right here. So with that reminder that this is an incredibly unique moment, I want to start by saying that I have traveled around the world and I have listened to so many women's dreams. I've listened to their hopes. And it's time that these dreams are not hidden in any dreams, in any drawer or any hearts anymore. Because all those dreams, whether I am in Nigeria or in India or in Japan or in the Middle East or back in Norway where I come from, the dreams are hardly never only about that one woman. That one woman have a dream that goes so far beyond herself, and it's almost always about the common good. And that brings hope to this time. So as the speakers before me also said, that empowerment that we step up to live our dreams has never been more important. Now, I grew up in a small town in Norway. I did not travel the world until I was an adult. I traveled to little islands near where I grew up, to the mountains. I played with the shell, with the trees, so I was surrounded by nature. But I have also lived in big cities later in my life, and I like that too. And the thing is, we have so many choices, and we also have our roots, and remember our roots and our journeys and how we can expand the future for all of us. Now, today we are going to talk about, and we are already talking about women. We talk about peace and we talk about sustainability. And all these words means different things to all of you in this room. When you think about peace, it has a meaning for you, maybe another meaning for somebody else. And so it goes with sustainability. But we have chosen today this word, women inspiring. And we chose the word inspiring. We didn't say women building or making a more peaceful and sustainable future. And that word was chosen with intention because it is through our upliftment or having this joy in us that we can also radiate and lift up everybody, okay? So I find that is very important in this time. And the feminine is out of balance with the masculine in the world. We know that. And it's out of balance in business, in our societies, and even in our own lives. Sometimes we can catch ourselves as women that we also value the masculine and what a man do, even higher than what we do as women. And it's in us because women and men grew up in the same societies. So we have to learn to empower ourselves and catch ourselves in that and give equal value to that. Also, you may wonder how we can create the change even more through inspiration. And I think one of the ways is this string of connecting. Dr. Modi addressed a little bit how this came about, the relationship. And I can go back in time, and I met a lady from India called Kanta Singh, who is also in the room, who then introduced me to Rekha, the sister of Dr. M, who then introduced me to Dr. M. And here we are, all of us collaborating together. Then I met Dr. Flute, and all of this happened. But did this happen in a linear way? Did I plan to meet that person? No, I did not. I kept doing a good job, and I kept inspiring. And suddenly things started to happen. Suddenly we started to meet people. And that's what I encourage all of people here in the room today. Keep doing what you do, and do it well, and do it with your heart, doing it with your compassion, do it with integrity, and things start happening. Because it's this magic networking, it's the magic connections that we want to cultivate, and we want to see happening here today. And how do we do that? Okay, first of all, today, and in the future, be as open as you possibly can with each other here today. We will have some small discussion groups. You will listen to speakers. They have different accents, different age group. Be open. So hear different things and catch yourself if you judge it. Catch it. And then also be quick to connect. So in a break afterwards, go up to somebody, say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so." And start talking. That's totally okay. And also be quick to contribute. If you see someone needs some help, you help them. We like to help each other find our purpose and expand it, and also work with our passion. And at the same time, also, if something is blindly open about things, but something is unacceptable, we also say to each other, we never accept unacceptable behavior. That's very important for all women. And for men, for that sake. And we take some risk, and then we can get this magic. And in a coffee break, in a discussion group, listen. The power of listening is very, very important. Sometimes we talk about having a voice. Yes, we need to have a voice. Women need to find their authentic voices. We need to speak up. And also, we need to listen. Many years ago, in my country, in Norway, we had this Prime Minister, Gro Harlem Brundtland. She later started the World Report on Sustainable Development. She was the first one talking about that many, many years ago. Later, we have had many others talking about it. But sometimes I thought, if we had listened more back 30 years ago, the things could have been a lot different. So it is not only about our voice being heard, but it's also about voice being listened to. And each of us here in the room have the responsibility to do that. And we listen in a way to make people feel heard, seen, valued, and even felt. And I like to think about all of you, all of us, as shining stars, all the men in the room, all the women in the room. Because what if we looked at each other as shining stars, and the more we come close to our authentic selves, the more we shine, the more we connect with ourselves, our intuition, our purpose, and each other, the more light we find. And what if the individuals grouped here together today forms an incredible constellation, so bright that it will light up the world. What if your enthusiasm, your joy, even your sadness sometimes, your creativity and your creating beauty, and or generosity is the answer? Thank you very much. New hat. No, what we will do now before we start our introduction to our next session on the world in transformation, I like that you talk to the person sitting next to you, or perhaps behind you, or in front of you, and share a little bit about, first of all, if you haven't met that person before, share who you are, what you do, and something else about you. And this can continue all through the day. Who you are, what you do, something else about you. And that something else I will recommend is something you are passionate about. And then if you have more time, we keep talking about what are some of the major events happening today that you see there is something that brings hope or something that can come out of that. Okay? So now, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, keep talking or start talking. Okay, thank you. I went up. Hello. Oh yeah. Oh, there it was. I didn't see that. Gentlemen, no. Hello, hello, hello. Hello? Can get it on. So okay.
Take Natalie. We're about to start. Let me go sit down.
Okay, everybody sit down. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to now move into the next panel discussion. And if you want to take a seat, we're super appreciative. And please take your seat.
Ah, good. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. So ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. We're about to begin. Thank you. So our next session is dealing with a world in transformation. And we are asking, what is the role of women in this changing world? And what are all these changes? And how are they impacting women? And what are the forces that are shaping our lives and our work? So let's look at them in so many different ways. And what does these changes mean for us as leaders? And what do they mean for a more peaceful and more sustainable future? So we have invited 4 speakers to talk about this, but from very different angles, from very different points of view, or from very different stories. And the first woman I'd like to invite here up on stage is Assal Latifi. She's a young woman. She's 15 years old. She was born in Herat, Afghanistan in May in 2006. Imagine that. And but she had to leave her birthplace and escape the devastating civil war in her troubled country, Afghanistan, when she was 3 years old. Later, she became a refugee in Greece and then managed later to settle in Netherlands. And now she's living in the UK with her mom and 2 young brothers, and she is a high school student in Brighton. So a big warm applause to Assal Latifi, and welcome up here. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Assal Latifi, and I'm here to show you the world through the eyes of children. As a young child, I would always run around my grandmother's house. I would argue with my cousins over ordinary things, such as him taking my school bag back. I always had joy. I went to my mother's school and my grandmother's school. It was so fun. I loved it a lot. That wasn't until my childhood had been taken away by the Taliban. It was night. I remember it clear as day. We walked all night through the woods. We had no foods or drinks. I remember being on a mountain, and I watched in horror as I saw a lady fall from the ridge of the mountain. It was terrifying to see. I started crying, but nobody noticed. Everybody was worried for themselves. My younger brother was on my mother's back, and my father was carrying our stuff. I started crying a lot. I remember that as I was walking and crying due to my tiredness, a man helped me by my mouth to shut it. I still don't know why he did that. It was so scary. I had a sense of fear and tiredness. I really didn't know what was happening. Why did we have to walk for so long with no food? Why did I have to leave my school? Why did my mother have to stop doing the things she loves the most, teaching? If only my country never fell into the hands of evil, I would still be walking around my grandmother's house. I would be waiting for my dad to come back from work so I can read with him. I wouldn't be standing here today, fighting for my country, and speak about my dear sisters in Afghanistan who are once again experiencing the pain and torment I did as a child. I wouldn't wish this experience on my biggest enemy. Nobody deserves a childhood or teenage years taken away. It is the reason to live on as you grow older. Although I'm safe now in a wealthy country with my friends and my family, and I have no fear of going outside, I can do what I want, I can be in love, I still wonder how I got here. Why would the Taliban take an innocent child's freedom? My childhood started in the Netherlands. I had friends, I went out. I had a lot of joy with school and my friends. I get why so many people don't bother with school. I get that it can be boring and very strict. But to be honest, school is a home for everyone. Imagine one day waking up as a girl, getting news that you are banned from going to school because you are a girl. Boys can go, but you can't. All these girls, they wish for nothing but to go to school. They wish to not wear a hijab from their face to their feet. They wish to not be in male's presence while they're going outside. They have no freedom. Everything they do, they get shot, they get killed. All those young girls, they will kill themselves because they have no education. Now imagine waking up as a girl in the UK. You have the freedom for everything. You can wear what you want. You can go wherever you want. You can act however you want. You won't be shamed or insulted for the choice of your clothes or your behavior. Whereas in Afghanistan, girls cannot step outside without the Taliban enforcing their restrictive idea of how they should look and dress. With the Taliban in power, there will never be freedom for girls. That's why I'm here today, to show you how important education is, even though it's failing everywhere. In education, I believe that children should be able to decide their own future. It shouldn't be the choice of the adults. It should be treated fairly. Schools only care about one thing, which class you're born in. A teacher's responsibility is to make the child improve. Why then ask for money in return? I'm here to make education fair. We can't let the adults pressure you to do the exam or do something you won't later need in the future. A child should decide their own future, no matter what. Finally, I speak on behalf of my sisters back in Afghanistan, whose dreams are no different than any other girl. Their dream is to go to school and be educated, to learn a new skill, to help themselves and their country. We also have one nightmare, that other countries, for political reasons, may accept this inhuman behavior of the Taliban and ban school everywhere. Like thousands of other Afghan girls, I wish that countries would stand against the Taliban, just as my mother is doing, Angela. She started an online school for hope. Even though that she can't really help them that much, she's still defying them. She's going against Taliban. If she can do this, why can't you do it as well? It is more than 100 years that we, the women of Afghanistan, are fighting for a fair life. Even in this critical situation, it is no exception. My mother was a teacher. Now she's a teacher of hope. She's doing it online. The girls in Afghanistan, they're trying so hard. They are managing self-education as well as courageous demonstrations. To close my speech, I would like you to listen to the voice of women from Afghanistan. These women need help from the world to prevent the extremism from expanding in the region and the planet. It is not time to close our eyes and just ignore their voices. It is time to give them a hand, open our eyes, and take this seriously. The time for action is now.
Thank you so much. And let's not forget the women, and let's work in sister and brotherhood. And thank you so much. So, yes. What did Dr. M say? We are all one. That's important. Yeah. So, yes. We're going to also move into trade. And we talked about how we do, everything we do matters. So we can use business, we can use NGOs, we can use all our work as a vehicle of peace, as a vehicle of sustainability. And therefore, everything is important if it's done in the how of our hearts and in our how of our sustainability and peace, and bringing with us the young ladies and the old and the boys and the men. So our next speaker is Simonetta Zarilli, and she's working exactly on trade. She's Chief Trade and Gender and Development, working at United Nations UNCTAD organization. She's in charge of the Trade, Gender and Development Program of the United Nations on Trade and Development. This is a program that was launched in 2010, and she has been leading that all the way. She's equally the organization's gender focal point, and under her leadership, the program provides analytical and policy support to all the member countries all over the world on the gender implications on trade. And she trains academic, policymakers, and civil societies, representatives of trade, gender, and development issues. And I think I stop here and I give the word to Simonetta. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Christine. Thank you so much for inviting me and reaching out to UNCTAD. UNCTAD is the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. We are a department of the UN Secretariat, and we are based in Geneva. Indeed, my office is in this building on the 8th floor, so I understand that you had to queue for even an hour to get your badge. For me, it was easy. My office is here. And it is, of course, it is a privilege to be here. This room is especially beautiful, is very big, so sometimes it can be a bit intimidating. But I have rarely seen this room so full of people and so full of energy. So thank you for coming to the UN and making the UN the place for everybody. I think we heard a very, very touching and inspiring speech from our very young speaker. And so it's a bit difficult for me to follow up after so many inspiring words and also after listening to such first-hand experience. But what I would like to talk to you about is something that don't take it as a depressing intervention. I will speak about the specific impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and of the ongoing war on women. This is not, I think Christine mentioned in her intervention, hope for the future. So my intervention is not to put the hopes down. On the contrary, we believe that in order to find the solutions, we have to identify what are the specific difficulties that women face. This is the first step to move ahead with the solutions. So we know that both men and women have been very much impacted by the pandemic. The pandemic has created a lot of suffering and a lot of difficulties. And the same is for the ongoing war. So I would like to go briefly through the specific difficulties faced by women. I am not referring to women in a specific country. When I will talk about the world, I will not talk specifically to Ukrainian women, it's more women in developing countries in general. So if we could kindly move to next slide. Okay. So we know that the number of women working, living in extreme poverty will increase this year. And the approximate number is almost 400 million. And these women live, in particular, in sub-Saharan Africa and in Central and Southern Asia. So a concentration of poverty, of women's poverty in specific developing regions. Now, through our analysis in UNCTAD, we have singled out 6 reasons for which that can explain why women have been particularly affected by the pandemic. So we single out the 6, doesn't mean that there are no additional reasons, but let's say that according to our analysis, these are the main reasons. So let me start with temporary employment. We know that women are particularly employed in the kind of casual part-time jobs. And we know that across the world, women represent less than 40% of the overall employment, but they represent almost 60% of those working on a part-time basis. And when the crisis struck, the first ones to go, the first workers that are dismissed, are those who are in this kind of precarious employment situation, while highly skilled employees and employees with more stable kind of contracts tend to be retained. Second reason, informal employment. We know that women are highly employed in the informal sector. This means they don't have a formal contract with their employers. And this means that in most cases, they don't exist. So when, by and large, all countries put forward measures to support the economy and the people to shoulder the shortcomings of the health crisis, those who were in the informal sector were outside of the rescue packages because somehow they don't exist. They are not in the statistics. And so many women didn't benefit from the support that were offered, that were made available by their governments. And indeed, according to data, the income of women working in the informal economy fell by around 60% during the first month of the pandemic. So we are talking about March, April, May of 2020. Next slide, please. Let's look at additional reasons. The female-dominated sectors. The sectors where women work have been particularly affected by the pandemic and by the measures put in place to stop the spreading of the pandemic. So social distance measures and travel restrictions. Now, we know that while men work in many sectors and occupations, women are much more concentrated in specific sectors of the economy. So women are very much active, for instance, in tourism, in the tourism sector, in hospitality, so restaurants, hotels, and in retail trade. And these were exactly the sectors really badly impacted by the restriction measures put in place to stop the spreading of the pandemic. We know that the services sector in 2020 declined by 16.5%, much more than the decline faced by trading goods. Let's move to the micro, small, medium size enterprises. We know that these enterprises are very important worldwide, but they are particularly important in developing countries because they provide employment. And they provide especially employment to women. We know that 1/3 of formal micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises are fully or partially owned by women. Now, what happened during the pandemic is that there was, of course, all these enterprises faced a number of problems. They didn't have buyers, they couldn't get the inputs they needed. And in time of crisis, it is very important to have access to credit to make the enterprise survive during really the harsh times. But we also know that women's access to credit, to finance, is very limited. And this meant that many companies, small micro companies owned by women, collapsed during the pandemic because they didn't have enough access to credit that could have allowed them to survive, especially the first very difficult months of the pandemic. So we have some data here. During July and August 2020, in the LDCs, so we are talking about the 47 least developed countries, so the poorest countries among the developing countries, women-owned companies, micro small companies, had higher rates of layoffs and less resources to sustain their business as compared to men-owned companies. There was a survey carried out in May 2020 for companies based in Asia and in Oceania, and 22% of women-owned small and micro companies closed as compared to 16% of those owned by men. And 80% of women needs for a credit went unserved. So 80% of women couldn't get the access to finance that would have allowed them to make their companies survive. Then we have the increase of household responsibilities. We know that across countries and regions, women hold the lion's share of responsibility related to the household, to the care of children, of the elderly members of the family, of the sick members of the family. And this is true everywhere. Even if we talk about countries like Kristine's country, even in Norway, women hold a bigger responsibility related to household care work. Now, what happened during the pandemic was that the school closed, the day center closed, and some mild cases of COVID were treated at home. So the amount of work, care and household work for women increased enormously. So it increased also for men, but we know that that for women, according to data, it increased by 33% as compared to 26% for men. And because of this, we know that women usually have the double task of working inside the household and outside for paid activities. But since the amount of household responsibility increased so much, many of them completely quit the labor market. And this is very is something that should make us reflect, because all the advances in making women active in the labor market somehow stopped because women couldn't face the double responsibilities. The household work became too heavy, and some of them quit the labor market. And again, this happened in the United States, it happened in Chile, it happened in Turkey, it happened across countries and the region. 6 points we have kind of picked up as among the main reasons why the pandemic had a specific harsh impact on women is domestic violence. Because especially for during the period where really was impossible to get out of the home, people could not leave their home, and because of the financial stress that families went through, there was an increase in domestic violence. And we know that domestic violence usually is underreported because women don't report it. But even considering the underreporting, there was a surge of cases of domestic violence between 30 and 50%. And again, here we are talking about this phenomenon affecting all countries and regions. And we also know that domestic violence is not only something extremely painful and long-lasting shock for women, but at the personal level, but it it also has very negative impact on women's productivity, capacity to contribute to the economy and to the society. So the overall impact is very negative. Now, what is, if I can have the next slide, please? What is happening for the recovery? What we are seeing is that the post-pandemic recovery has been divergent even before the starting of the war. We have seen that rich countries and some emerging economy are returning to pre-pandemic output trends. And this because they could, people and companies could enjoy a lot of support, financial support offered by, made available by governments, and because they had, people had early access to vaccines. The situation is different for developing countries, which are still, and for years, will face the shortcomings of the pandemic. So we see, for instance, that in developing countries, women are still underperforming regarding their presence in the labor market. And this trend is expected to continue even next year, while we see that in developed countries, women are expected to outperform men in the recovery. So they are coming back to the labor market. Now, I mentioned that...
Yeah, I was timing.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to mention that a data that to me is very telling, that is the LDCs, so these 47 really poor countries were able to support their people with $18 per person. The developed countries were able to support their people with $1,365 per person. So then you can see, you cannot be surprised of the difference and the outcome. Now, very quickly, let me go through moving to the war. This other, if I can have a next slide, please. This is the other shock the people are going through. As I said, I am not here talking about women in Ukraine. I know that there are people from Ukraine who can talk about it much better than me. Here we did an analysis about the impact of the war on women in developing countries in general. And we saw that because of the war, the prices of food, agricultural products, and agricultural inputs are going up. And this has a negative repercussion on women's capacity to provide food for the household. We know that women are mainly responsible for the well-being of the household, including nutrition. And we also know that this lack of inputs, agricultural inputs, make it difficult for them to produce, to be efficient farmers, and to have enough food for the household. The same goes for very high energy prices or the unavailability of energy prices. And this again has a specific, is bad for everybody, of course, but has a specific negative impacts on women in developing countries, because again, women are responsible for fulfilling the energy needs of the household. So if there is no, for instance, no electricity, then they have to go out to fetch woods or other sources of energy. These inefficient sources of energy using for cooking or for heating can have, and is proved that has severe health impacts on women who are in the household, but cooking, but also children who spend a lot of time, small children in the household. And finally, the inability to run micro enterprises that, for instance, food preparation or small-scale textile work. This is done at home, and if there is no energy or affordable energy, this small micro enterprises cannot. Yeah, it was at the end.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And it's also quite shocking to see how the years of COVID has made it so much disproportionately different and difficult for women versus the men. But we are all one. So it's a benefit of both women and men that we work on turning this around, even if it's hard. But sometimes also we feel anger inside. It feels unfair. Why did this happen? And this anger, we need to let it out in some way. And I think the best way is to fuel it into good new initiatives. I would like now Adriana Quinones to speak. She's from the UN Women, and I am sure she's working on these topics every day. And she's the director here in the UN Women's Liaison Officer in Geneva. She comes from Guatemala, and she's worked on women's topics for many, many, many years. And it's an honor to give her the floor now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to share with you different initiatives that we're working on from UN Women. I am originally from Colombia, but spent the last 4.5 years working in Guatemala. And I will share with you some of the lived experiences of women around the world and seek with you ways in which we can join forces and be inspired, as is the objective of today. Thank you very much, Christine, for this wonderful invitation. And I would like to start with a video for us to see what's happening with women around the world.
We know that almost 500 million women are illiterate in the world today. And this is the trend that has not changed in the last 20 years. There is an urgent need to drive solutions, especially for women who have missed out on education, and ensure that they too are able to access decent work opportunities.
This is me. This is my story.
Yeah, my life hasn't been that great.
मोर खाली गोटे मन भितर थिला जे पाठ पढिछि माने मोर आ किछि नै.
Que acabé mi primaria y me casé a los 14 años y trunqué mis estudios. Yo siempre me daba el tiempo a mis hijos, no me dedicaba a mí.
فتاة في قرية ما في فرص عمل في القرى. In conflict, displacement, and crisis, with high rates of poverty, violence, or discriminatory social norms, or in peaceful settings, there are many obstacles that prevent women from accessing education opportunities. UN Women and the BHP Foundation have partnered to break this trend. Women in 6 countries have joined UN Women's Second Chance Education and Vocational Learning Program to test solutions for bringing women who have fallen behind back to education and into decent employment. The evidence base for what works will provide a global model for scaling local solutions to economically empower women in a variety of contexts around the world.
शिक्षा का महत्व सिर्फ हमारे जिंदगी की नौकरी करना ही नहीं है. कहीं ना कहीं हमारे परिवार को भी संभालना, परिवार को एक सही रास्ते पे लेके चलना, बच्चे को सही गाइडलाइन देना.
These are the early results of women who have started the journey with the Second Chance program. They dream about starting their own businesses.
أنا بحياتي ما خيطت وتعلمت الخياطة هون وصارت الخياطة عندي يعني هي الأساسية والحمد لله وصرت أخذ منها راتب وحبيتها كثير يعني الخياطة.
C'est ici que je viens installer ma table boutique et le marché passe bien.
They dream about improving their skills.
احنا اليوم تعلمنا كيف نقص البايبات بشكل دقيق 100%. فكان إشي عظيم جدا.
te sientes bien y todo, y eso te da motivación a que tú sigas aprendiendo.
I said to myself, I have to learn digital things because I don't want to be dependent on anybody, especially for your personal things. Oh, they will know your secrets.
They dream about securing decent jobs.
Empecé a buscar alguna forma de mejorar de manera académica o de manera personal. Comencé el programa de oportunidad con intenciones de nivelar los estudios, pero me di cuenta que había otras opciones que era empleabilidad y emprendimiento.
उस टाइम मुझे नहीं पता था कि मुझे एजुकेटर का पद मिल जाएगा, तो सर ने बताया मुझे कि आपकी सैलरी 6,000 होगी, तो मैं उस टाइम बहुत खुश हुई कि कहाँ मैं 1,000-1,500 रुपए और कहाँ मेरी 6,000 सैलरी.
They dream about achieving their true potential.
In this short time, I've already achieved so much.
Es una segunda oportunidad a la vida, a estudiar, a todas las oportunidades que en la juventud, en la niñez dejamos. Ahorita estamos aprovechándolo.
El programa me ha ayudado más que nada en confiar en mí, el poder seguir adelante, el tratar de avanzar un poco más de lo que era.
You can do. There is nothing impossible.
Yo quiero que mucha mujer escuche, mucha mujer sepa que tiene esa capacidad de sobresalir y de aprender.
Thank you very much. And here in this room is the manager of the Second Chance Education Program, Anna Parini, in the back, if you have questions after this presentation, because what we need is to take to scale these kinds of initiatives and support each other in wherever the gaps are. I am very proud that this is one of the initiatives of UN Women where the majority of the funding comes from the private sector, which means that all of us can make a difference, a very substantial difference in women's lives. I want to share with you that in our research from the COVID response task forces around the world, only 24% had women represented. So imagine the great opportunity that COVID has presented, as the previous speakers have shown us, but the COVID pandemic demonstrated that the situation for women and girls is still not where we want it to be. 25 years after the Beijing Platform of Action, the fourth conference for women, which identified 12 areas of advancement. And we have seen such little progress. We have majority of countries with legislation, national action plans on ending violence against women, on the importance of accessing credit, of accessing education, but these legislations are not implemented. They don't necessarily have the budgets that are required. They're not evaluated, and majority of times they are implemented by the women's machineries, which are the more dependent on resources, the least funded, and the ones that had limited political clout. So these are the kinds of things that we need to make sure we address if we want to build a peaceful world, if we want to make the connections to ensure that women can participate, can transform the world as we need. So the pandemic has acted as a big revealer. In other words, the virus has exploded and worsened the inequalities, including gender inequalities that were there all along. 54 million women lost their jobs between 2019 and 2020, but even before COVID, there had been barely a change in women's labor force participation in the last 3 years. The closure of schools and daycares has pushed care back into the homes and onto women's shoulders. But even before COVID, women were doing 3 times as much unpaid care as men, with serious implications for their economic autonomy, education, and health. Coming from Guatemala, we saw in one of the surveys that women were working 13 hours more than men every day, which means a second job, a full-time job, compared to men that were supporting only 3 hours a day. The pandemic has led to an increase of domestic violence, as we have heard, but listen to this, child marriage. The calculations by our colleagues from the UN are that child marriage is one of the effects that we're gonna see as more families lose their income, as the need to protect girls, child marriage will increase. Harmful practices that we thought were long ago, long ago completed, we will see more and more girls forced into marriage, which means truncating their education, their possibilities for ending a relationship that, for example, ends in violence, their participation, and of course, they will not be in the seats of decision making. But we already knew that 1 in 3 women will experience violence in their lifetime. So when we think about the recovery for COVID-19, we need to recover the ground that has been lost on gender equality and women's rights by tackling these long-standing challenges. We put together as UN Women a feminist plan for sustainability and social justice that looks at 3 main issues: jobs, care, and climate. So I don't want to repeat what has already been said about jobs and the potential, but I do want to mention our opportunities in terms of care. And this is an invisible topic that's gaining more and more prominence. Care is a public good that generates benefits and extends beyond the individual care recipients to societies at large and into the future. Societies need to stop free riding on women's unpaid and underpaid labor and collectively assume the costs of quality care for all. A care-led recovery is needed, with investments in the care economy to support women's re-entry into the labor force, the well-being of children and older people, and the creation of decent work. But I want to call your attention on the opportunities we have on climate. We urgently need to transition our economies into environmental sustainability. We need to step up on climate finance commitments, because we see more and more agreements signed, but we don't see the resources, and the majority of the resources are not going to women and their organizations. Women leaders in local communities are spearheading innovative approaches to promote sustainable energy transitions in agroecology, which protect local ecosystems and are based on indigenous knowledge. Governments must support their efforts so that these models can go to scale, but as we have seen, we can also support from every place where we stand in the world. So it's not easy, it's a different way of thinking. And when we put women at the center, when we think about gender equality, women's empowerment, it's a lived reality for women and girls, things start to make sense, from participation, access to resources, and in decision making. And that's what we are proposing to work together towards. So a social contract that should be based on the universal human rights framework. And we are working here every day with the Human Rights Council. There are many resolutions on the right to a clean environment, the right to work, the impact on COVID. These are all resolutions that should be implemented, and we can follow on all their recommendations. States also need to be able to mobilize maximum available resources. Austerity measures we have seen that have a great impact on many generations. So investing on education, as we heard before, investing on access to jobs and to finance is a way forward. So we want to break the cycle of economic insecurity, environmental destruction, and exclusionary politics. And this requires all of us to be aware of, yes, there are all these challenges, they were there before, they have been exacerbated, they're more visible, but we have more opportunities now. So as we saw in the video, let's think about how we can support changing, transforming lives, of a life that perhaps didn't start the right way, of a woman who was forced into marriage at 13 years of age, that by the time she's 40, she may have 3, 4 children to care for, that she might be subjected to violence, as it's always the case. Understanding all these cycles and the connections that we can make to connect to new jobs, to new technology, to new discussions, but also to demand the participation of women, of young girls, and of course of young women in all parts of decision making. So let's think about, as a source of peace building, as a source of reconstruction, as a source of thinking in a new way, to put women at the center, and the answers will come through for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Adriana. I love how you also said we can support from wherever we are, which means it doesn't need to be big things. It can be small things, and the solution of partner doing things together. And also you mentioned care, the unpaid work, and also I would like to stress, give care value. Also that we see all the people who are doing unpaid work and that we don't take it for granted. We are saying thank you, we are seeing it, and we are valuing it. During the pandemic, there were also lots of issues with mental health. Imagine losing your job, you get so much extra, you lose your money. There are many things going on. And another thing is also this thing of media that is changing. And on that note, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Lorella Zanardo. She's a women's rights activist and a director. She is particularly the president of New Eyes for Media, and she offers educational programs on image and the media culture. She's written several books and a couple of documentary movies. And I won't say more because time is valuable here. And Lorella, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, can you hear me? Yes. It's beautiful from here. So some years ago, I realized and uploaded a documentary video to the internet with the objective to raise awareness about the image of women presented in the media. The object and title of the documentary was Women's Bodies. It was the beginning of a real change and marked a great push towards women regaining a central position in Italian society and recognition of their influence and presence in our society. Women's Bodies was the first documentary to criticize the exploitation of a female image for commercial, ideological, and political purposes. Using images that had been broadcasted on the media over the past 30 years, the documentary attracted enormous interest and began a critical reflection. I have a video here. Sorry. Yeah. The making of the documentary was driven by an urgent sense that women, we women, real women, were disappearing from our screens, TV, PC, tablet, or smartphone, only to be replaced by grotesque and humiliating representations. This loss felt huge to me. The erasure of women's identity was happening right under our noses. We wanted to raise questions about the reason for this erasure, to which we have often been silent spectators. As we went on with the documentary, we focused in particular on the issues of the disappearance of mature faces from TV, the use of plastic surgery to eliminate signs of time passing by, and the social consequences of this cancellation. Apart from the worldwide attention the documentary has received, Women's Bodies is also a touring project that raises awareness of the discrimination women have to face. Since many years, I have traveled the Italian peninsula, European countries, and the US, meeting women, men, boys, and girls to reflect on, understand, and identify patterns of behaviors and specific actions that could lead to parity in the representation. If a girl can see it, she can be it. If you can see good models of women in the media, you can replicate yourself in society. If you only see objectivation of women, you will tend to copy it, especially when you are a very young girl. To achieve change and work towards the goal of women's rights, we need not only engagement and effort, but we need change. And change is destabilizing for society. So in order to start change, we need to be strong and to find the courage to be unpopular when necessary, at least for a while. So this is a message I want to share with you. In order to be the real move towards change in society, and I experienced it myself in my country, we have to find the courage to be unpopular. While you start change, usually people don't like you, because society tends to reward stability. So when I started to denounce the fact that in my country, these images were really offensive towards women, they were doing the contrary of empowerment towards us. People didn't like me very much. Well, people liked me, but not many politicians, many people doing TV, producers, because you disturb. So in that period, I felt very alone. And so one thing I think we should teach to our sons and daughters and pupils is the courage to be unpopular. Not all your life long, I hope, but sometimes. So, thank you. In the last years, I moved from criticism to focus on strategies for watching the media with a critical sense. So some people say, well, just switch off social networks, TV. So I think just switching the device off is pointless. You cannot say to girls, don't use smartphone. The real revolutionary act is to watch images, even these images, sitting right beside those who watch it all the time, and give them instruments to understand the evil message that sometimes communicate. Young people in premise. So, and from this consideration, we started our media education program, New Eyes for the Media, that has already reached thousands of students, hundreds of school and teachers, and liberate the potential of women. The danger of these images is that they imprison us. They are a sort of a cage. They become a model for us, especially for girls, and we spend a lot of time in order to stick to them. Some of you may be aware of the photographer John Ranking's experiment. I don't know if you know him. He's English. He asked some adolescents, young and girls and boys, to use his Photoshop in order to modify their faces in the way they wished. So he invited boys and girls, the age was 13 to 17, and said, listen, here you have Photoshop. You are free to modify your face as you like. This was the result. So you see all the faces went the same direction, both boys and girls. But what is strange, and it's really, I think we have to think about it. At the end of the experiment, ranking asked to the boys and girls, everybody answered, no, I would like to keep my face, but I must modify it in order to be accepted online, on social media. So this is a cry that adolescents, both boys and girls, I think they are addressing to adults, people, to us. And here are a couple, I don't know if you can see them. It's a very big research, perhaps you are aware of it. The Wall Street Journal published the research, a secret one, but then they published it, that was made by Facebook on the use of Instagram by boys and girls. Here I have only 2 slides, but you can find it online. It's very interesting. So it's called The Perfect Image. And if you see a lot of, we can send also the other one, but the result is that a lot of boys and girls, especially girls, say that they feel more insecure and unhappy when they are, after they use a massive use of social network. So we don't believe that the social networks are the evil. On the contrary, they are very useful. But I think what is lacking is education on how to use the internet and the social network. So it's not the problem, the social network. I think we share the idea that they can be very useful. I use them a lot, but we haven't taught to adolescents, young boys and girls how to use it. So after many years, why I'm talking about face, working on images of women bodies, now we are focusing on our faces.
C'est très beau d'être libre dedans. Très beau.
So these were some images taken from our new documentary video, Volto Manifesto, Face Manifesto. And the heavy use of photo retouching on social networks and in advertisement to influencers whose digital appearance is difficult to distinguish from one another, and androids with increasingly anthropomorphic features. Such phenomena have brought to everyone's private and social life daily encounters with artificial faces. Faces that share a common unreachable goal, stopping the passing of time. So we are asking, we want to share with you some important questions. Which are the consequences of the ongoing transformation on interpersonal relationships and society? Which are the effects on our life? Will the disappearance of the old face be without consequences for our community? I want to make an example. I'm here with my face. Here you see a huge face of Lorella Zanardo. Does it make a difference if through my face, I start a relationship with you? I see this lady, the man with the bird. So it's through faces that we start relationship. So this work we have started, it's about what changes if I start to cancel my face. Face is not only a place of aesthetic, place is a place of ethic. Nobody tells us this. Nobody tells to young boys and girls. Nobody told me when I was growing older that the fact that I have wrinkles or signs, it's not only aesthetic, it's ethical. If I come here, I tell the story of my life through my face. So it's important we educate on the importance of face in relationship. The theme of this topic of this the topic of this, thank you, of this panel is also about war. Do we have a face which is able to reflect what we feel inside when we are facing with images of war, or are we becoming, our faces are becoming invulnerable? So I think that these are important questions we should share. Next one. Yeah, the human face bears a message, vulnerability. Here we have Nadia Murad, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, and her face is so vulnerable now, and we are attracted by this face. So in a transformation of such magnitude, our important elements come into play. First, contemporary standards of beauty marked by strong conformist tendencies push towards the homogenization of individual features. In a present time permeated by digital relationship, deviating from these canons can lead to exclusions from social trends and provokes a lot of pain, especially to girls. And second, will the removal of the old face without consequences? So I propose that when you go out and you return to your houses, we keep in mind, and we, in the days ahead, we think, what are the repercussions of the face alteration on our lives? Being it not just any part of the body, but the face is the very place that makes us unique. The face is the part of the body that makes us persons. Is the disappearance of the old face without consequences? And what it is important to say that what is at stake is not the free choice of individual behaviors and modification. I'm strongly convinced that we should remain free to do whatever we like with our face and never forbid anything. But the fact is that such complex experiences are taking place without a widespread awareness and a shared social reflection. So therefore, it's not a matter of issuing judgments, but of starting an urgent reflection in light of a human face being the place where our sense of existence arises. The face is the place where our sense of existence arises. Being aware of this is more essential than ever. We have 1 minute video here.
Posso schiarire la pelle, alzare il contorno e posso sorridere e alla fine mi vedo innaturale, però senza difetti. Cosa accadrà nel prossimo futuro? Avremo un unico volto che annullerà tutte le differenze somatiche che fino ad oggi ci hanno contraddistinto? faccia a faccia con un volto artificiale, anche perfetto nella sua somiglianza a noi umani, mi può rivelare a me stesso, mi può sorprendere? Questi volti sono la nostra casa? Queste facce mi rimandano all'esperienza profonda di chi io sia? Questi volti rendono possibile l'incontro con l'altro? Cosa stiamo perdendo attraverso la cancellazione dei nostri volti?
I invite you to watch our video in the next weeks. It will be published on the internet. We always put everything free on the internet because we want that young people share it. So by proposing the element of a face as a heritage of humanity, our project Volto Manifesto aims to invite everyone to join the shared collective dialogue on the uniqueness of a human face, of the digital and physical transformation that are taking place. We have entered the digital humanist era. So in addition to this video, that you have seen only a small part, we have developed a manifesto, and I would like very much that you share it with us. And it's a 10-point manifesto that we want to publish and to spread and share with everyone. And of course, it's not meant to be like a dogma, but to offer food for thought on key themes. You see, some of them are really important. Honor the old faces. Your face is not just yours. Never thought before about it. Love the vulnerability of your face. We have been taught all our life long to look invulnerable, especially when we work. Perhaps vulnerability is beautiful. And I think that we make connections with people when we have the courage to be vulnerable. I want to be vulnerable. I want to learn to be vulnerable. And perhaps less wars would happen if we would have the courage to show vulnerability. So I ask you to share this manifesto, and I invite you all to join us in this ambitious and necessary project in order to empower ourselves and all the women to live up to our full potential. And I think that it's high time we consider, and this is perhaps a little bit courageous and a little bit strong, but we consider our faith a heritage of humanity. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Lorella, for this groundbreaking and revolutionary work. And she asks, what are the consequences? And I think that's something we should take seriously and follow Lorella's recommendation there. And that we're free to do whatever we want, but we just want to be deeply knowing what we're doing. And I was also thinking, as she mentioned, vulnerability. I'm sure that during these few hours we have already been together, there's been a lot of emotions that have come up. I felt a lot of emotion listening to our 15-year-old here today. I felt looking at the robots and our faces, and then also the Nobel Peace Prize winner, Nadia, the picture of her. And a series of many, many, many more things. I just mentioned a few. And all of us, I'm sure you felt that too. And we are feeling human beings. And so I was thinking, when Lorella said, not be scared of our vulnerability. And I felt vulnerable right here, right now, watching those images. And then I thought, oh, what do I do about that? Do I run away now? No, I'm here. And I can imagine it happened to you too. So here we are, vulnerable humans, just experiencing vulnerable moments where we are watching things we don't really know what to do with, maybe, or maybe yes, but that is the humanity we are, and that's the beauty, and that's our heart. And with all those touching and all those different images we have experienced this long morning here together, we are now ready for a lunch break. We have moved, as you saw, the program a little bit, but we do come back here at 3 because we have 1.5 hour lunch break. That should be more than enough. And I wonder if Juliana has some messages for us. I think so. Juliana, please come up. And again, a warm applause to our panel here today and all our speakers. And thank you to all of you. Amazing work. And also, it's so short time, and the work you're doing in the world, all of you, so amazing. So thank you again. Yeah.